Coming up on this episode of Tom Talks Rubbish.
Through this podcast, I made a lifelong friend in Mike. I've lived out my dream of getting to step inside of a wrestling ring and be a ring announcer.
Hmm.
I've now promoted a wrestling show. I've talked to endless amounts of my childhood heroes, and I've talked to some of I do media work for TNA Wrestling. It's incredible.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Travis, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by the one and only Tyler from the Count Out podcast with Mike and Tyler. So, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on here. I love the work that you do, so I think we're gonna have some fun today.
Definitely, my friend. So, if we take this back, Tyler, where do you first discover wrestling as an overall fan?
Oh man, so I've loved wrestling my entire life. I'm 41 years old. I just turned 41, and my earliest memories in life are sitting on my great grandfather's lap and watching Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man and all that stuff from like that mid 80s period. So I go all the way back to day one for me.
Hmm. You talked about the 80s being your go to there. What do you think it was as a child that made you go, yeah, I like this. Let's do more of this?
Um, I think Hulk Hogan. Like Hulk Hogan was huge in the 80s, right? So as a kid, as like a 5-year-old kid, like I'm seeing this crazy guy talking gibberish and ripping his
Hmm.
shirt off and hulking up. But also like that era had a lot of fun characters. Like, you had Coco Beware with a bird and Jake the Snake with a snake and the British Bulldogs with their dog. So like like a 5-year-old kid seeing like the British Bulldogs come out with their dog, I was drawn to that as well, right?
Mm. How do you, and not to bring the mood down immediately, but a lot of those people in that era have sort of turned out to not be the best people in real life.
Yeah,
Sense.
yeah.
So how do you now view that time, and how do you separate, for lack of a better word, the art from the artist if you go back and watch some stuff?
I'm pretty good at being able to be like I can respect their body of work, but not them as a human being, I guess. Because it's like a movie, you know what I mean? There's movies that I really like, and there's actors that I think are not great people as well. But I can watch a movie and be like, oh, that's an awesome movie, but I
Mm,
don't need to be in line with your views in life, and the big example everybody goes to immediately, and since his passing, is Hulk Hogan, right?
mm,
Mike and I, we did a full tribute episode to Hulk Hogan, but we made it very clear that this is a tribute to Hulk Hogan, not to Terry Bollea.
mm,
I'm not going to, get into anything political or anything like that, but, he was doing his Donald Trump stuff and he had all the racism stuff. And that's just not how I view my life. So I'm not going to be like Terry Bollea was my guy, but Hulk Hogan was my entire childhood. So I just try my best to separate it because I want to always enjoy wrestling. And
mm.
the wrestling business, unfortunately, it's not full of the greatest people sometimes, but it's also full of some incredible people as well. So I just separate it the best that I can. It's tough sometimes. It's funny. I talked to my wife about it, and because she's not a wrestling fan, so she doesn't understand it, right? And
Mm.
she's like, "Well, how do you support this person?" I'm like, "Well, I don't support the person. I support his character." Like that's the best I can give. Chris Benoit was another example. Chris Benoit was my favorite wrestler forever, and then he
Mm.
did terrible things. So it took me a few years before I could go back and enjoy a Chris Benoit match again. But now I can watch a Chris Benoit match and not be in love with Chris Benoit, if that makes sense.
You mentioned Chris Benoit being your favorite wrestler for a while there. Did that mean that when the tragedy happened, you stepped away from wrestling for a while?
No, I've never stepped away from wrestling. So the Chris Benoit thing was different for us. Like I'm Canadian, right? And so
Mhm.
is Chris Benoit. So even though we're from much different parts of Canada, there weren't a lot of big Canadian wrestlers during that time period, like on the main stage. So we had
Mm,
our Chris Jerichos, we had our Chris Benoits. Bret Hart obviously is he's our god over here. We love Bret Hart, but to see a Canadian represented, like we adopt that person as our own.
mm,
And I became a Chris Benoit fan in 1996. That's when I first found Chris Benoit, and because I love wrestling, like I love tag team wrestling is my favorite, and I love mat-based grappling wrestling and hard-hitting style, right? And Chris Benoit was everything to that. So I was devastated when all of that happened, and I was devastated to see that he was the one that caused it all. But I've never, there's never been a point where I'm like, I'm not going to watch wrestling. I will
mm.
just not watch the things that I don't enjoy, right? So I'm just very good at being like, I'm not a fan of this person.
Compartmentalizing, I believe, is the phrase.
Absolutely. I am a fantastic yeah. I'm tongue-tied over here. But yeah, I can do that very well. I can separate anything and I'm just very, some people love Rhea Ripley, some people don't love Rhea Ripley. I like her. I will watch her. If there's a performer that I don't enjoy, if there's an angle that I find distasteful, I won't watch it.
Mm. You mentioned 96 there. That's discovering Chris Benoit. That's a beautiful segue for me because I was trying to find one to get to the Hulk Hogan heel turn sort of thing. And you
Yeah.
gave it to me. And I really appreciate that, man. So how did your fandom sort of change as the Monday Night Wars kicked off and Hulk Hogan became the bad guy, for lack of a better phrase, as he was your childhood hero?
Well, by that point, I was not a Hulk Hogan guy anymore. But we also in Canada, so the part where I live, I'm like pretty much a Toronto area in
Mm,
Canada, and we didn't have access to WCW really. Nitro, we had no access to at all. You could maybe randomly find it on like a Saturday afternoon on like a random channel. Like sometimes you just stumble across it. Like that's how I saw Scott Hall show up in WCW. I just was channel flipping on a Saturday afternoon and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's wrestling. Oh, this is I know WCW. Like and all of a sudden, whoa, there's Razor Ramon. Why is he fighting Sting? And I was hooked on that. The Hogan heel turn at that point, my fandom had shifted. Like I was really big into the Hart Foundation. Bret
mm,
Hart at that point had taken over. Bret Hart is my all-time favorite wrestler
mm,
ever. I have different, you know how like Taylor Swift has her eras tour. I have my wrestling eras, I guess. And, when I was a child, it was Hulk Hogan. Bret Hart was when I was in high school, and he will be always my favorite of all time. And then as the years went on, I got into CM Punk and Daniel Bryan and tag team wrestling. So I keep evolving my style of wrestling that I like. But the Hulk Hogan heel turn, it was awesome, man. It really shook up the wrestling world. He was a little more of a cartoony character heel for my liking at that point. But man, what a fun time to be a wrestling fan watching the NWO come out. And 'cause this was before the internet was a big thing, right?
mm.
I didn't know that. They were portraying Scott Hall and Kevin Nash like legitimate outsiders to the company, and I didn't know any better. I had just seen Razor Ramon lose to Vader at In Your House, Good Friends, Bitter Enemies a couple months before that, right? And Diesel to Shawn Michaels. So as far as
Yeah.
I knew, they were still WWE guys.
I get what you're saying there completely. How did your fandom then change, Tyler, when you did discover the internet and you maybe discovered the dirt sheets and things like that?
I think I just got so immersed in it. It took it to a whole new level. Like just reading about what could be happening backstage and I think like the biggest turning point in my fandom was when I discovered Ring of Honor.
Mm,
I love like that early Ring of Honor period. Specifically the period right around where Daniel Bryan won the world title, or Bryan Danielson, as he was the American Dragon, right around that time period when he became the champion. But even before that, like Samoa Joe's run was epic. I couldn't see a lot of it because, I didn't have options to buy the DVDs. But
mm.
as the years went on, Ring of Honor started doing their weekly video wires, and I would see matches on YouTube when that started to become a thing. And man, Ring of Honor just changed everything for the way that I looked at wrestling.
I always ask people this when they say that their gateway was sort of Ring of Honor. What is your thoughts on what AEW has done with Ring of Honor?
Um, I get what they're doing with it. It's not Ring of Honor anymore, as far as I'm concerned, and it's really cool for me. Like through the podcast, I've become friendly with Kerry Silken. He's been on our show 3 times. Like I can
Hmm.
shoot him a DM and talk with him if need be. Like we're not, I'm not going to say we're friends because I we're not friends, but I can be an acquaintance of his, we'll say.
You have a
And
wrestling connection, shall
I
we say?
have, there we go. And I've been blessed to make a few of those over the years through our podcast. And so it was really cool to like talk to Kerry Silken about his views of the new Ring of Honor. And I won't mention it because they were private, but the things that he told me off camera were a lot more exciting than the things he told me on camera.
Hmm.
But it's just cool to have those moments. But yeah, the new Ring of Honor, I think AEW should use that as more of a feeder system, kind of like how OVW was for WWE and how NXT is. I think that there is a spot for this new Ring of Honor. I just don't think that Tony Khan has found it yet.
Would you have rather seen, I know CM Punk made this joke, the Ring of Honor almost got not discarded, but you know what I mean, just used for the library rather than what it's being used now?
Um, I'm gonna say no, just because I just love hearing Ring of Honor. It's just got a soft spot for me, and I haven't given up hope that something will change with it. You know what I mean? Like it's never gonna be what it was, and I'm not holding my breath
Mm,
for that. But I do think that there is a great place for Ring of Honor in that AEW system still. I just think it's a little too confusing right now with what they're doing.
mm. What was your thoughts, just quickly before we get into your current day fandom, Jericho
Yeah.
winning the Ring of Honor title?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I think Chris Jericho has such a smart mind for the wrestling business. A lot of people were really upset that he was the first AEW champion ever. They all thought Hangman should have been it. I was not one of those people. I thought it was a genius move to
Mm,
have Chris Jericho, who at that time was probably their most recognizable wrestler as
mm,
far as a mainstream audience goes. So if you're seeing Chris Jericho on your TV, oh, Chris Jericho's a champion in this new promotion. Whereas if you're flipping it at that time, nobody knew who Hangman Page was except for people like us. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like the hardcore wrestling fans. And now where you see where Hangman Page has come and that slow build that they've done with him over the years, he's the top guy in the company, hands down now, right? Chris Jericho as the Ring of Honor champion, I love that gimmick of I'm a sports entertainer. I thought it reminded me of the old ECW gimmick with Mick Foley, where he was like, I love WCW. Like, that's so fun. I was at an AEW show. We were sitting, I don't know how this happened, but we ended up getting a front row ticket for a collision when it came to Toronto. And I was
oh
sitting
yeah.
with fellow indie wrestler, shout out Van Landon, always got to shout out the boys. And we were in the front row and we started chanting "Wrestling sucks" when they were doing the Jericho group was doing their promo. And it popped the guys in the ring, like they kind of looked over, gave us a thumbs up, and we just had so much fun with it because how great is that to take the most respected wrestling title, the Ring of Honor, as far as a pure wrestling standpoint goes, that title is highly regarded, and to be like, nah, this is sports entertainment now, like a great heel work.
Mm. You mentioned fellow indie wrestler there, Tyler. Does that mean you've done some work on the indies then and like some wrestling on the indies, my friend?
I have not wrestled ever, and I will never wrestle. But I always like to give a shout out to and try to put any type of shine onto any of the local wrestlers. I have so much respect for what they do, and I have way too much respect to ever step inside the ring. I have been a part of some angles
Mm.
inside of the wrestling ring. Like I've done some promos. I did a pushing spot with somebody one time. Shout out Kyle Boone and Shiloh. They are so fun to work with, but I have no desire to ever have a full-on match. I don't want to disrespect the wrestling business like that.
I understand what you're saying completely.
I have refereed though. I
Oh
refereed
yeah.
one time, and that was a crazy story actually. It was because I'm a ring announcer. That's what I do. I ring
Mm.
announce for a promotion called Barry Wrestling. We run a show once a month. It's a highly respected indie promotion in the Ontario area, and it's such a fun atmosphere. We're all like a big family there, and I know that's cliche to say, but like we really are. Like we all genuinely want this product to succeed. We all work together, and we do these fair shows every year called Kempenfest. And Kempenfest is a cool thing for me because it's like when I was younger, my whole family, we would always come up and go to
Mm.
Kempen. It's like a big outdoor festival. There's like music and fairs, the beach, like, oh, and now there's wrestling. So anytime I get to announce at Kempenfest, it's really like sentimental for me because I get to like relive my childhood memories, I guess, which it's a lot of wrestling for me in general. But I showed up the one show and the promoter Sean was just smiling at me and I said, "What?" He goes, so we don't have a referee today. And he just threw me in no training or anything and I refereed 6 matches. It was
Oh
so much
wow.
fun. Yeah, I was tip of the cap to every referee on the planet. It is not easy at all, but I had so much fun doing it and all the wrestlers were great to help me get through it.
Is it true what they say that there's no cardio like ref cardio, if you know what I mean?
Man, I 100% like my legs were sore for 3 days after. I just felt like you're doing like burpees for like because you're just down and up counting,
Yeah.
right? And it was funny. Like I'll tell one story from inside the ring just to peel the curtain back a little bit, but because I'm always a wrestling fan, right? So it was the second match I was refereeing, and I kind of just got caught up like watching, like instead of remembering I was part
Mm.
of it. And the heel wrestler, his name was Rajan Husher, who's a great talent, was working a guy named Grizzly Mac, and he was choking him in the corner. And I'm supposed to be counting, right? 1, 2, 3. And I was just kind of watching because they were having such a great match. And Husher kind of looked over his shoulder and like said very quietly to me, "You gonna do anything about this?" I was like, "Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3." Yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
So if another opportunity came up to ref, we'll get into the show you co-promoted in a minute, but if another opportunity came up to ref, is that something you'd be interested in, Tyler?
I'm not going to go out of my way to try to do it, but if it's what needs to be done of me to help the show go on, I will do anything to make sure that we can run a successful and fun show with Barry Wrestling. I try to be like a utility player. I want to
Mm.
try to just do what I can to help. You know, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'll never be the best referee on the planet, but if I can help us get through the show, 100% I'll do it.
What
I'll
ref
never.
what referee from maybe our childhood or things like that were you channeling that night, sort of thing?
A lot of Jimmy Corderas, local. He's because he's a Toronto boy
I love
too.
Jimmy. He's been on the show.
He's yeah, I saw that. He's a great guy. He's a friend of my show as well, and I always liked Jimmy because he gave the best advice. Like I just tried to think about what he said when we were on my show, and he was just like, referees should not be seen until they need to be seen, and just have a strong, like a steady count, right? And that's it. And I always liked Jimmy because he was never trying to be the focus, never trying to be the center of attention. And you see some of the younger referees are trying
Mm.
to, you know, be in that spotlight a little bit more. And like to me, I don't want to put myself over. I'm here to put the wrestlers over more. And that's what I do with my podcast. That's what I do with my ring announcing. I'll do things if it's asked of me, but I'm not looking to be the spotlight.
What about when you're ring announcing? Who do you channel then?
Um, I don't know. I've ripped off a little bit of Justin Roberts with my I do a big introduction for Van Landen, but I blatantly stole his John Moxley introduction for that when he does a big John. So for Van Landen, I extend his Van and I scream it out, Van. I'll go as long as I can go, and then I'll hit the Landon and we have fun with that. I had my first ever voice crack doing that over the
Oh
Kempenfest
wow.
shows on. It was a full on stereotypical high school puberty voice crack. We all had a good laugh at that. It was really funny. But I just kind of channel my own self, I guess. I don't really, I really like Gary Michael Capetta's style, but I don't have his tone, his voice. Like I have a pretty, I guess a little bit of a nasally voice. So I can't really pattern myself after anybody because my voice can't do what other people do. I just kind of wing it in there and you know whatever happens happens like everybody's name is different to pronounce. So like I can't hit the same levels that somebody like Howard Finkel would hit on
Mm.
an announcement, but I can say their name a different way. And there's certain people that I try to do a little spin on, like I mentioned Rajan Husher. He does like a painter, like artist gimmick. So when I introduce him, and now he's a babyface, but when he was a heel back in the day, I would introduce him in a quieter tone, like Rajan, and then when I get to Husher, I would hush. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
awesome.
right? I would do something like that. We have a gentleman named Grizzly Mac, so and he's a baby face now, so I puts like a roar into my voice, like Grizz. There's just certain people that it just kind of comes out naturally too, and I try my best, and I ask all the talent before the show. I always make a point to talk to every talent. I go around, I ask them their information, their weight, their hometown, any nicknames, and I say to them, "Is there anything I can do to make the entrance better for you?"
Mm.
And some people are like, "Yeah." They'll give me things. Yeah, say this, say this. Other people just go, "Yeah, just do whatever." Some people use me as a prop in the ring. I've been chased out of the ring multiple times. I've had somebody take my tie off and throw it away. I've been pushed around. And it's all just off the cuff, and I tell them I'm there. If you need me, I'm there to, and I'll play off whatever you guys do.
You mentioned like playing off and things like that. Have you ever like a wrestler's just gone, oh, just do whatever, come up with an introduction for a wrestler on your own, and they've then been like, yeah, do that. I really enjoyed that. Do that again, sort of thing.
Yeah, we there was a couple that come to mind. Van Landen was one of them. He's a friend of mine outside of like I've become a good friend of his over the last like him and I have become actual friends over the last couple years. So we worked on his entrance together and like extending the Van Landen because I'll time it out to where he gets to the ropes so he can hit his pose when I'm doing in the middle of the Van Landen, and then that's kind of like our thing we do. We did a running bit with he's not with us anymore in Barry, but we did a bit with this guy named John Atlas where he would not allow me to introduce him. So I would come up with an idea every show for a reason why, because he was in a group called Top Tier Talent, and I wasn't a top tier ring announcer according to him,
Mm.
in storyline, of course. So
Yeah.
every month we would come up with a scenario where he would prevent me from announcing him and have somebody else announce him. So we had a lot of fun doing that. A couple of his like managers or like tag team partners would cut me off and introduce him, or he would bring another our old ring announcer he would bring to come and do that, who does commentary now, Diamond Jim, who's been a great mentor to me. He would bring him into the ring to do his announcements, and it was really cool. He had a big title match, and we did the Japanese style ring announcements for that. And it was cool for me because Diamond Jim Lowe, who's the former ring announcer and the voice of Barry Wrestling, he's now the color commentator or the play. It's a color commentator, yeah. We got
Mm.
to be in the ring together. So he announced John Atlas, and I announced his opponent, and it was like a cool moment for me to get to share that with Jim in the ring because he's just been a phenomenal mentor.
That's really, really cool, my friend. How does we may have done this round the wrong way, but it's just how the conversation goes. How
Yeah.
does the Count Out podcast with you and Mike come about?
So I've always wanted to do a wrestling podcast. I got into the early days of like wrestlers podcasts, like Colt Cabana and the Art of Wrestling. I was the day one of that podcast. I found it very early because I was a big CM Punk fan and I
Mm.
saw CM Punk on it. And I always loved Cabana as well from Ring of Honor. And the other one was Post Wrestling with John Pollock and Wei Ting. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they were a part of a group at the time called Live Audio Wrestling, and they did a weekly radio show in Toronto, and then it went into the internet, and then they branch off into Post Wrestling. So I was always really inspired by those guys, but I don't know anything about podcasting. I didn't think that I could do this or anything like that. So you fast forward, I guess it's 5.5, almost 6 years ago now. I met Mike through a mutual friend of ours. We both were managing a restaurant at the time,
Mm.
the same brand, but different chains, right? We worked about 20 minutes apart. And our mutual friend, his name was Steve, said, "Hey, you got to meet this guy. He's a big wrestling fan." So I met him and we started talking, and he said he used to do a podcast called The Lasting Mark as part of a group called WrestleMedia. And I
Mm.
was like, man, like I've always wanted to do a podcast. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think we could find something together? And in my head, I'm thinking, you know how to do this. You've had your own podcast. You know how to set it up. You know how to do the editing and all that stuff. So we agreed upon it, and we sat down and had a beer one night, and we came up with the concept for a countdown show. We'll do a weekly top seven countdown show, and we were trying to find what number we wanted to do. I didn't want to do a top 10 because I thought it was a cop out and too easy, and I thought like a top five was too short. But I thought seven was like we both agreed seven was like that perfect middle number where it's
Happy
like
medium.
it's a happy medium where you still have to like work hard to like come up with seven, like, but it's not like 10 where you can have those, oh yeah, I'll put this in this here. Like you really have to like put effort and thought into a top seven. It makes you kind of work a little harder on it. We came up with the name Count It Out because it's a countdown show, and we were off to the races. But the funny part is Mike, my co-host, he didn't ever do any of the editing or any of the like that wasn't him. He had no idea how to do it either. So I just started learning it on my own. And now I'd like to think I'm pretty good at editing and making reels and all that stuff. I've learned a lot over the last few years. But yeah, it was funny because I just thought I would piggyback off into Mike and make this podcast work, but instead it's been a pretty good partnership.
Mm. You mentioned there, Mike, not knowing how to do stuff. When you're thrown in the deep end like that, does that make you go, "Oh, sugar, I don't know if I can do this"? Or is it almost like a determined side where you're like, "I want to make this work. Let's learn how to do this," sort of thing?
A little bit of both. Mike's a great partner. Like when I say like he doesn't know how to do this, that's just the like the editing
That's
point.
what I meant.
I
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
like I kind of just took that upon myself, I guess, because I was interested and just the way that the world is now, you can Google anything. And I reached out to a couple people that I knew that had like smaller podcasts about other topics and said, "Hey, what do you use?" And they would point me in the right direction. And it
Mm,
was just trial and error over the years, right? Like I remember there was an early podcast that we did because I didn't know how to edit at the time, and there was something that was said or done, or I can't remember, but I wasn't happy with it, and I didn't know how to edit it out, so we just deleted the whole episode. We
oh
just
yeah,
never because I just didn't know how to edit it,
I've
right?
been
So
there. I've been there.
yeah, so it's just learning from that point, and then you make contacts over the years, and I'll give a shout out to Jonah from the R3 podcast.
I'm so
Uh,
glad you did that because I was about to bring him up in a second.
Yeah, despite what Jonah tells anybody, Jonah slid into my DMs, all right, many, many
Mm,
years ago, and we just kind of kept in contact. He messaged us because Jonah's such a great networker,
mm,
and I guess he was just, hey, this guy's doing the wrestling. This was during COVID. We were not a COVID podcast. We actually started our podcast. We were about to start our podcast right before COVID. We recorded four pilot episodes together just as like a tester, and then Mike went away on vacation, and COVID hit when he went away on vacation. So we became a COVID podcast unintentionally, even though we were planning on doing it before.
mm.
So Mike and I were going to do an Instagram live special, and Jonah had messaged me the night before, and I invited him to come on, and that's where we met Jonah, and he showed up in his tuxedo, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's kind of kooky. Like, I like it." And Jonah and I, we work together all the time now. He's taught me a lot. He's really helped me with the graphics side of it, like how to make a strong thumbnail, how to make reels, and we play off each other. Like I will help him, put questions together for maybe people because I'm older than him. So if he gets an older
Mm.
guest, I can, but we always will bounce our questions off each other. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And it's nice to have somebody that you can trust and work with. We say he's part of the Counted Out family. We have a couple people that are we're lucky to have in our group like that.
Who are the others then that you're like, yeah, they're part of the count out family. Treat them well, guys.
There's a couple guys. Adam Contant is one of them. He used to run the WrestleMedia group, their podcast group. He's been a tremendous help, especially with TNA stuff. He's Mr. TNA, so he's done some media work with us with TNA in the past. If Mike and I are ever not able to record together, Like today, for instance, I've asked for myself to take the week off this week because I need a little break, right? Every now and then you get, tired or whatever. Just, just take a week off, spend some time with the family or whatever. So Adam's going to jump on with our other colleague, Matt Sukram is his name as well. And so we're really lucky to have people like Matt and Adam and Jonah to play off of. Van Landen is another one. He's come on and co-hosted with me a bunch of times when Mike can't make it. So we're lucky to have that support team behind us. And they genuinely cheer for us. And like I appreciate it. And we have a lot of loyal listeners from day one. Some of them are friends. Some of them are people we've met through the podcast, and it's really cool to have this little community that we built.
You mentioned there, like, for example, you're taking this week off due to, I don't, burnout might be a strong word, but like,
Yeah,
for not wanting to feel burned out and things like that. So, how else do you deal with burnout as a creator?
I've been pretty lucky to not get too much burnout because I love what I'm doing. I'm excited about it.
Mm,
But every year, like Mike and I are really good at just being like, "Hey man, I'm just not feeling it this week," or "I just need a break," or I can't get my work schedule to line up with yours. We're really lucky to have a partnership where each one of us will have each other's back. I think in 6 years almost of doing this, we're coming on to we're 5.5 years now, and I think we've only ever missed 2 weeks ever
mm.
of our podcast, which is pretty impressive. Like we're coming on to 300 episodes soon. So like we're lucky to have that partnership where we have each other's back. I will always take off the month of January for the most part because we do a big year-end show at Count It Out every year.
Mm.
Because we do our top seven countdown. So we count down the top seven moments of the year. So Mike and I will alternate every year, but we do a catch with it where we have seven different guests and each guest will have a moment. And we don't just, bring in like our friends or like we reach out to big name wrestlers. Like we've had TJ Wilson, Will Ospreay, we've had Carrie Silkin. We reach out to an indie wrestler every year. We get seven pretty big guests every year to do the show. So it's a lot of work to do. Chris Harris has been on it a few times. Like it's a very tedious, it's a very time consuming episode to put together. We break it up into two parts. We do a segment where we pay respect to every wrestler that passed away over the year. So we'll mention their name and then play a short promo that they did, do a 10 bell salute for them. We also do our wrestler of the year, match of the year, pay-per-view of the year, tag team of the year, all that stuff. So it's a lot. But because we have seven different guests, and I usually just take a little snippet from our conversation that we have, I have, 5 or 6 interviews in the can
Mm.
that we'll just play through the month of January and give ourselves like that. Whoa, we did it. Like hey, take a couple weeks off and breathe, and we get back into the saddle.
Is that almost like, I remember this clip of Shawn Michaels. I can't remember where this clip's from. He said he started taking time off after Mania because there was like a talent meeting once, and Vince was like, Mania went great, blah, 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 blah. But that was yesterday. And you didn't really get time to savor what you'd achieved. Is that similar to why you take January off?
A little bit, for sure, a little bit. I have an incredibly patient and loving wife as well, who
Mm.
allows me to have this hobby of mine, and I want to be respectful of our time together as well. So she knows, November, the middle of November to the end of December, I record more than I normally do. And I don't want to ever take advantage of my relationship with my wife and make her feel second fiddle as well. So I give her the respect of being like, hey, I'm really sorry. This next month and a half is going to be busy. However, I'm not going to record for 3 or 4 weeks and make sure that we have time to make sure that we're happy and content. Because I'm not Chris Van Vliet. I'm not going to be that type of a podcaster. I'm happy doing it the way that I do it. So finding a balance, and I'm not always great at finding that balance because I get excited sometimes and I love doing this, but I want to make sure that it's important to me to know that she's a priority in my world as well.
You mentioned there, I get you get excited to do this sort of thing. What has been your biggest sort of maybe the wife's got plans moment, and you're like, but this opportunity's just come up. Maybe you've had to reschedule sort of things.
There's been a couple. Yeah, there's been a couple for sure. We've had a couple. We had a dinner date planned one night, and it was the only night that Rob Van Dam could do an interview with us. And I pushed the dinner date because it was Rob Van Dam. She doesn't
Mm.
know who Rob Van Dam is. She was cool about like my wife's cool, you know what I mean? And I always try my best to make it up to her, but she understand like if I tell her like, listen. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a big one.
Mm.
She's really cool at being like, go do what you got to do. You know what I mean? I'm just lucky to have a great wife. So
What is it that you feel? How does it help your fandom, maybe, or even you as a creator? The fact that your wife knows nothing about wrestling and isn't a wrestling fan.
so I'll tell a fun story. This is my favorite story to sum up my wife. My wife tries to, she'll watch like some WWE here
Oh
and
yeah, my
there.
girlfriend does as well. My girlfriend does.
Yeah,
No
we went to
joke.
some. Yeah, she likes going live. Like we went to SummerSlam 2019 together, and she had a great time. She's found certain characters over time that she thought was cool. Like she liked the Fiend Bray Wyatt and Broken Matt Hardy, and then she thought it was pretty cool because I just interviewed the Hardy Boys last week. So I was like, oh, I interviewed the Broken guy, and she thought that was cool. But the moment where I think she realized like what I'm doing is not just it's more than just like two guys talking about wrestling. As we were watching the Vince McMahon Netflix documentary,
Mm.
and Eric Bischoff was all over that documentary. And she goes, "Wow, that Bischoff guy, like he kicked Vince's ass. Like he should have won. He should have won the Monday Night Wars." And I looked at her and said, like I've had Eric Bischoff on our podcast, right?" And she was like, "What?" It's like the first time that like it clicked, like, holy crap, like that's really cool. So I always get a kick out of that story.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That is really, really cool. To just before we move on to your co-promoted show and things like that,
Yeah.
what is something you feel like you bring to the podcast that maybe Mike doesn't, and vice versa?
Mike and I, we look at wrestling so polar oppositely and so similarly at the same time as well. We both like a lot of the same style of wrestling. And when it comes to our podcast, Mike will make his list with his heart, which I love. And I look at things more from the business side of wrestling.
Mm.
So it's a really cool dynamic that Mike and I have where, and we get like this a lot when we interview people, especially like people from like the new generation era or like the 80s era where Mike is not afraid to show his fandom at all, and I love that. Like he watching like the glow on Mike's face when we talk to some of these people, it's really cool for me to see because I love seeing my partner so happy. And I'm more like reserved, I guess, a little bit, but we'll mark out after our interviews for sure together. So, but Mike will ask questions that I would never think to ask, and they're always these phenomenal questions, and he just comes up with them on the spot. So we
Mm.
play off each other really well because I'm like an over prepper, and Mike's more of a feel the moment type of guy. So when we make our lists, I look at things like, okay, like if we're doing like top moments of somebody or top heels of all time, we've done a list like that. I'll make my list thinking like, who drew money? Who made the business better? And Mike will look at it more like, who did I hate? Who did the fans? Who got the best reaction from the fan? So we look at things differently when it comes to our lists, and we butted heads a few times on the show. There was one particular episode where when we were done the episode, we each got messages from people being like, "Did you guys just like break up on the air? Like, are we done with Count It Out now?"
Mm.
And it was funny. So I'll tell the story. We did an episode where we said, "Who is Mr. SummerSlam?" Because we had debated the week before about the top SummerSlam performers of all time. And the two names that we landed on were Bret Hart and Seth Rollins. Because at the time, Seth Rollins had just had this incredible stretch of matches at SummerSlam.
Mm.
And I love Bret Hart, but for the sake of the show, I argued Seth Rollins and Mike took Bret Hart. And we started talking about Seth Rollins versus John Cena at SummerSlam. And Mike does not like that match, which is cool.
Is that just the Jon Stewart interference?
That's the John Stewart finish. Yeah. So
Is that
up
why he
until
doesn't like it?
I think he said that Cena's spot calling was a little too loud for him and it kind of took him out of the match.
In all
And
fairness, that's a John Cena match.
100%, right? So we were talking about the match and he was telling me he didn't like it, but he went on to say that it was a terrible match. And I disagreed with that. I said, "Listen, you can not like the match all you want." I said, "But to call the match terrible is ridiculous. Like you can't say that's a terrible match. It's still a great match. It's just not a match that maybe you enjoyed. But it's widely regarded as a fantastic match." And we were arguing a little bit about it. And then I told him that by him saying it was a terrible match, it made him lose all of his credibility in
Mm.
his argument. But he took that as I was telling him that he had no credibility as like a podcaster. And we got into this really like heated argument for about 3 minutes where we were like screaming at each other. And then we just moved on. We finished the show, and then we like stopped recording, and we just started laughing. Like it was to us. He's like, "Yeah, you're such an asshole," and I'm like, "Sorry, you," and we just laughed about it, right? But so it was a really intense moment on the show. But like Mike and I are such good friends that we're the type of people that can say you're an asshole, and then 10 seconds later be like, "Yeah, you're funny," like whatever.
I understand what you're saying completely there. How did your recent show with, is it cowbell wrestling come about? How
Yeah.
did that recent show, co-promoted show with your podcast come about then, Tyler?
So I knew this guy in high school, and I'll give him a big shout out here, Jeremy. Jeremy Moore, great guy. And he, like, when we were in high school, everybody was wrestling fans, right? So him and I became friends because we liked wrestling. And, life takes you your separate ways. Like, he went one way and I went another way. We didn't really talk a whole lot over years. We'd periodically run into each other and catch up or whatever. So then, like, a long period of time had gone by and we hadn't talked to each other. And a really good friend of ours, a mutual friend, was getting married, and we both ended up in his wedding party.
Mm.
So we were catching up over his bachelor party. We were at a cottage and we were having some drinks, and I told him I'm a ring announcer now. And he was like, "Oh my God, like you're doing it. That's incredible. I'm going to come up and watch you do a show." So he came up to watch me announce a show. So Jeremy works for a beer company called Cowbell Breweries.
Mm.
It's in Ontario here. Fantastic beer if you're a beer drinker. He's their brewmaster. He makes all of their beer. It's all his recipes. He's phenomenal at his job. So he came up to watch this wrestling show, and one of the wrestlers that came out was wearing a cowbell hat.
Mm.
Jeremy was like, "What the heck? He's wearing my beer." So he became friends with this wrestler who, Uncle Custom, who actually main evented our show, which is really cool. And Jeremy always had this idea in the back of his head of, I think him and Custom talked and they were like, "We got to do a wrestling show at this brewery." And he had mentioned it
Mm.
to me before and I didn't really think much about it. And at the beginning of this year, he shot me a message and he was like, "Hey man, I got the green light. Like we're gonna do the wrestling show." He goes, "Put me on a wrestling show."
Mm.
And we went off to the races and we put on a great show. It was so much fun. It was something I'd never done before. So I booked the whole show. Mike and I worked together, but like Mike ring announced the show, which was really fun. I said, "You ring announce this one, man. I do it every month in Barrie. You take this one
Mm.
and you enjoy the moment." And I kind of ran the backstage more. So Mike
You're
and I
almost like
creatively.
the, I think it's Bruce Pritchard, or you weren't the Kevin Dunn, but you were like the Bruce Pritchard sort of thing.
Yeah, I was the more of the promoter, I guess, because I booked I had to deal with all the money. So like Mike and I would talk about the talent we thought we'd want on the show, but I would reach out and book them all, and I was working directly with the brewery, so that was kind of my role of running the backstage, and Mike and I put together the show together. We did the Counted Out Cup tournament, which was really cool to
Mm.
have a wrestling tournament named after our podcast. And It was a huge success. I know you hear it all the time, but we legitimately sold out the show. And we had to turn people away because of liquor laws of where we were doing the show. You could only have a certain amount of people in the outdoor venue to do it.
Mm.
So huge success. The brewery was so happy with it. They're already, they've mentioned that they'd be really interested to do it again next year, but to try to make it bigger, which is cool. All the wrestlers were really, really happy with the show. The Cowbell Brewery Company treated them phenomenally, and we had great accommodations. And I think we booked a pretty fun show together.
That's really, really cool. How
Yeah.
much different perspective, because you hear podcasters say, like a lot of people will give their opinions, but they've never taken a bump or been involved in wrestling themselves. So now that you've booked a show yourself and handled the money and things like that, how did that change your perspective and help you as a podcaster sort of thing?
Um, I don't know if it's going to help me as a podcaster per se, but it gives me like a totally different understanding of the world of professional wrestling. Um, I was I think at least, I'm just going to talk by how I feel I did. I think I was pretty laid back as a promoter. We booked our card out. We had our opinions of what we wanted, to who we wanted to go over. I only pitched one spot for one match, and that was our main event match. I don't know if you're familiar with the Saturday Night Live skit with Will Ferrell. I need more cowbell.
Oh yes, definitely
So
yes.
I pitched that spot for the main event. I went up to there was a six-man tag, no holds barred match, and I had said, "Listen, I want the babyface to go over and grab the microphone and say that I have a fever. And then the only thing I need is more cowbell." And then we played the song like AEW style at the Anarchy in the Arena or whatever. And
Mm.
we played the Blue Oyster Cult song and they brawled all around the fans. It was really fun. That's the only thing I pitched the whole show. I had a couple wrestlers come up to me and be like, "What do you want for my match?" And I looked at them and said, "I'm not a wrestler. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. You're here because I think you're phenomenal and I trust you 100% to deliver the best match that you can possibly put together." It's
Mm.
not my place. It's not my place. I've never taken a bump. Why would I tell somebody I've never trained? I don't have that type of ring psychology. So why would I tell a wrestler how to have a wrestling match?
I understand that completely. But is there anything that maybe as a promoter, if you do a second one next year, that you're like, I might do this differently, sort of thing?
Um, Honestly, I was really lucky because we had such an incredible locker room that I didn't have to change anything. I I think I would just try to do it the best that I can again, like I did this year, because we didn't have any big problems or anything. I didn't have any egos to deal with. We're so blessed in Ontario. I will say this to anybody that listens. The Ontario independent wrestling scene is the hidden treasure of the wrestling
Mm,
world. Nobody knows how good all of these guys are. And there are at least 7 to 10 people that I think you could pluck out of Ontario and put on TV in NXT or in TNA or in AEW and they would flourish. Look at a guy like Josh Alexander.
mm,
He is an Ontario independent guy. He's the most successful, in my opinion. Josh Alexander is the second greatest TNA superstar of all time. I think
would agree.
AJ Styles will always be number one. But if you look at Josh's body of work in TNA, longest reigning TNA heavyweight champion, longest reigning TNA tag team champions, the incredible string of matches he put together. And on a personal note, I was fortunate enough to get to ring announce Josh Alexander's last Canadian independent show ever.
Mm,
And that was such an honor. I got to sit down and do an interview with him before the show, and he's just such a class act. And for me to be the smallest part of one of the most respected Ontario independent wrestlers of all time and his last Canadian independent match for now. I'm sure once AEW run ends for him, he'll probably find his way back. But for me to do his final match was so awesome and such an honor.
that's really, really cool. as I want to be respectful of your time, Tyler, as we've been
I'll be
talking for 50 minutes, believe it or not,
really.
and
We can keep going if you want, man. I got some time.
I want to be respectful of your time, my friend. If you were to step away from podcasting, anything to do with wrestling and things like that, would you view your current run as a success, sort of thing? And
I
how do you
would.
define success?
Success is defined for me in happiness, first and foremost. I mean, even if nobody listened to my podcast, and there have been probably a few shows where not many people have, especially in the early days, I had fun. I get to sit down with my friend once a week and have fun and talk about something that I love and I've loved my whole life. But we're so lucky. We have interviewed people that I grew up as like childhood heroes. We've interviewed some of the biggest stars in professional wrestling. If you go through our index, our archives of interviews, you'll see Matt and Jeff Hardy. You'll
Mm.
see Eric Bischoff, Diamond Dallas Page, Rob Van Dam. Um, I've been really fortunate enough to make some great I use the word friendships loosely because it's not like, I'm hanging out with these people, but like I become friends with Bronwyn Billington, and her dad was my favorite wrestler as a kid with Hulk Hogan, the Dynamite Kid and Hulk Hogan. And now like I can message her. We talk about life. We talk about our cats. We support each other and give each other advice on podcasting. I can shoot a message to a guy like TJ Wilson who respects us enough that he said he'll come on our show anytime that we want. He's my favorite guest of all time, and
Oh,
uh,
wow.
he's just talking to him is like we grew up in the same era, and it's just like you're talking to your buddy that loves wrestling, right? So that's cool for me. Like we had TJ on the weekend right before Elimination Chamber in Toronto, where John Cena did the heel turn, and he told me that he was producing on the show. He was going to be doing the Trish Stratus tag match. So when the match ended, I sent him a message and I was like, "Wow, that was phenomenal." And he replied to it. Like I'm in the arena and I'm talking to the agent of the match. Like when I sit back and think about something like that, it's so cool. Um, yeah, those are the things that I really value about the podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think we have been successful through this podcast. I made a lifelong friend in Mike. I've lived out my dream of getting to step inside of a wrestling ring and be a ring announcer.
Mm.
I've now promoted a wrestling show. I've talked to endless amounts of my childhood heroes, and I've talked to some of I do media work for TNA Wrestling. It's incredible. We've had interviews picked up by news articles all over the world, United Kingdom, Mexico, Canada, United States. So I think we're the best podcast that you've never heard of. That's the way
Mm.
I like to describe us.
That's really, really cool. Just quickly, I want to ask you about being the best podcast you've never heard of in your own words, Tyler. But if you did step away tomorrow, what would you want your legacy to be?
Um, I just I don't know. That's a great question. I think I just want my legacy to be you can do things that you didn't think you could do. I never thought I would be able to do this and get to the level that we've got. Not that we're at a big level, but when you look at our resume, it's impressive. The
Mm.
fact that like you've seen our work and we're kind enough to reach out and say, "Hey, let's do an interview." That's such a cool moment for me, because I'm just this guy from Toronto that just loves wrestling. So uh, I would like to think that our legacy is just the little guys that overexceeded, I
Mm.
guess. Like we're not Chris Van Vliet. We're not known worldwide, but I do think that our name is out there a little bit.
Mm. I understand what you're saying completely there. As we wrap this up, Tyler, we are going to do the segment that is a staple on this show called Generic Wrestling Questions.
Let's
As
do
you
it.
have seen my interviews before, will know this well. Ask Tyler his favorite match as a fan, favorite pay-per-view card as a fan, favorite wrestler's entrance music as a fan, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler of all time.
Ooh.
Basically, the questions I assume you're asked on social media or at shows. So now you'll have a place to be like, guys, I have answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite match of all time?
Oh, I've got, I look at this in two different ways. I look at like my favorite matches that I've watched, and
Mm,
I've looked at my favorite matches that I've experienced live. Um, for me, I'm going to say Hulk Hogan and The Rock is the greatest moment I've ever seen live in sports.
mm,
That I was ninth row on the floor for that match, and I had an out of body experience when Hulk Hogan started hulking up. I was 5 years old again. I was jumping up and down. I lost control of myself. I've
mm.
never had that before, so that I'll go with that match just from a sentimental standpoint. It's not my favorite in-ring match of all time, but that match means a lot to me to watch.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite overall pay-per-view card?
Ooh. I'm a really, really big fan of SummerSlam 2002
Mm,
with Brock and The Rock, Shawn Michaels comeback match. I think that's one of the strongest pay-per-views from top to bottom that the WWE's ever done.
mm,
But I will also say the AEW New Japan, the Forbidden Door show that they did in Toronto with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. I was at that show live as well. That's the second greatest live moment when Kenny kicked out of the One Winged Angel at one. I lost my mind again. That was like rivaling Hogan and Rock.
mhm.
I'll go with those two matches, those two events. And Unforgiven 2006, sorry, because I was there live in the front row for that.
Is that where, isn't that where Trish Stratus retired from full-time competition as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually sitting right behind Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross in the front row for that pay-per-view. And it's a funny story. I'm a big Trish Stratus fan. I went with my best friend Wilson to this pay-per-view. He's my one of my best friends since kindergarten. He does not like Trish Stratus. And after the match was over, they show a close-up of Lillian Garcia crying. And we're in the background, and I'm like clapping for Trish, giving respect. My buddy Wilson just flipped her off. I'm like, oh, Wilson. So it's a moment we always laugh about. But yeah, that was and John Cena and Edge in the TLC match. That was
Oh
crazy.
yeah,
That and the Hell in a Cell with Vince and DX and Vince and the Big Show and Shane. That was a crazy card to be at. So those are my kind of go-tos.
that's really, really cool. What about your favorite wrestlers' entrance music?
Ooh, there's so many. I love Bret Hart. That guitar riff at the beginning is really good. CM Punk, both his Ring of Honor and WWE theme. But I think my favorite entrance of all time is American Dragon's Ring of Honor, the final countdown.
Mm,
I just think that's so cool. Like when he hits the pose and the whole place yells the final countdown. And again, what a cool moment to be at for the return of him using that at Forbidden Door in Toronto. That
mm.
was a super cool moment for me as a massive fan of his. He's in my top five favorite wrestlers of all time.
That's really, really cool. What about your favorite tag team, my friend?
Oh man, I love tag team wrestling. It is my favorite type of wrestling. Um, the Hart Foundation, probably going to be number one for me. British Bulldogs, big fan of FTR, current day. But yeah, I'm gonna go. Oh, the Hardy Boys too, because I go through different eras, right? Like
Yeah,
when I was in high school, like the Hardy Boys, I was a day one Hardy Boy fan. Like before they were Team Extreme, like when they had the plaid checkers on, working Sunday Night Heat every week, I was a Hardy Boys fan then. So I'll say Hart Foundation, Hardy Boys, and British Bulldog all tied.
that's really, really cool. And then finally, Tyler, the biggest generic question, in my opinion. Who is your favorite overall wrestler of all time?
Bret Hart, hands down. Bret Hart, Canadian hero. 1997 Hart Foundation run is my favorite time period of wrestling. Yeah, Bret Hart, best there is, best there was, best there ever will be.
As you didn't mention a Brett match for your favorite match, what's your favorite Brett match of all time?
Um, I really, really like his match with Steve Austin at Survivor Series 96.
Hmm.
I think it's such a great wrestling match. Crazy enough, I like it better than the WrestleMania match.
Wow.
Now, the WrestleMania match is one of the best matches of all time, but it's like a more hardcore brawly, like it's a gimmick submission match. If
Hmm.
you're looking at just like a straight on wrestling match, that match with Steve Austin at Survivor Series 96 is one of Bret's best matches of his entire career. And anytime I watch the Canadian Stampede 10-man tag, those entrances give me goosebumps, man. Like how they build from Pillman to the Anvil to the Bulldog to Owen. And by the time Bret comes out, like the cameras are shaking. It's incredible stuff. So yeah, I'll go with those ones for Bret.
As we wrap this up, Tyler, the question I end this show on is I believe as YouTubers, podcasters, even just people with general social media, we're all sort of going to live forever in a very, very weird way if you think about the word.
Mm.
So, what is one piece of content you're like, please remember me for that, guys? And then what is one that you're like, nope, I'm good. Forget about that one, please.
There's way too many I'd like to forget about. I hate all of my work. I always think I'm the worst all the time, but I'm hard on myself. My favorite interview that I've ever done is the second time that we had TJ Wilson on the show. Mike was unable to make the interview, so it
Hmm.
was just TJ and I talking, and I just forgot that we were doing an interview. Like we just started talking, and it was so cool, and we just made a great connection. My favorite moment in Counted Out history is the third time that we had TJ on the show, and Natty did a run-in, and we
Oh,
had
yeah,
TJ.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen this on your Twitter.
Yeah, we had TJ and Natty together on the show for about 10 minutes. That was probably the coolest moment in Counted Out history. As far as interviews that we'd like to forget or moments we'd like to forget, I have a hard time listening to anything from our first year. There's an interview I did, and I don't think it's a bad interview, but I just wish I could have it again. It was our first big interview ever. It was with Nikita Koloff.
Hmm.
And just like being more seasoned now than I was back then. Like I listened back to that interview, and Nikita gives I had a great string of questions, but I wasn't listening to Nikita. I was
Hmm.
just like question, question, question instead of having a conversation.
Yeah,
And I was too scared to veer off of my notes where now it's
been
like when
there.
I yeah, now it's like with like last week when I interviewed the Hardy Boys, I wanted to ask Matt about broken Matt Hardy, but I wanted to do it like as one of my last questions. And the way the conversation went, I just was like, this is my second question now. And I wish I could have had that mind frame and knowledge with like my Nikita Koloff interview or some of my earlier interviews, but I'm still happy with them. It's cool.
I think the thing we all have to remember as content creators, if you don't cringe when you watch your early stuff, you haven't improved. Do you know what
A
I mean?
hundred percent. 100%.
So as we wrap this up, Tyler, obviously I want to say thank you for a great conversation. But where can the good people find you, your work, etc., before we get out of here?
We would love anybody listening to this. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Counted Out the number seven. That's where you can find us on YouTube and on Instagram, Twitter as well, all at Counted Out one word with the number seven. TikTok as well. I don't really understand TikTok. It's the first social media that made me feel old, but I still post stuff on there. But yeah, any support would be great. We're really trying to grow our YouTube channel, so that's our big one. If you want to follow my ring announcing endeavors, it's at TCO, I believe, or Tyler Counted Out. I can't remember which it is. I'll tell you right now. It is at Tyler underscore counted out. That is my ring announcing endeavors. So you can follow some of my stuff on there. Check out Barry Wrestling as well. You can see them on IWTV. And if you don't have IWTV, then myself and ring announcer Mike, or sorry, commentator Mike Jeffries, we produce and put out a show called Rush Hour every Wednesday. I believe it comes out. It's on YouTube, so you can catch up with all the history of Barry wrestling there.
It's well worth doing, guys. One of the most up and coming people in this space. but one of the nicest as well. So if you guys like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter or X at Tom Talks Rubbish, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.
Thanks for watching this Tom Talks Rubbish conversation. Before you go, please make sure you leave a like on the video, share it around, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish on YouTube, as well as follow Tom Talks Rubbish on Twitter/X.